start dating a hairstylist.
There you go.
Only they own.
All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Board of Adjustments, July 28, 2015, meeting of the Board of Adjustments. I'm calling the meeting to order. Roll call of members. I'm Brad Walker, Chairman. Vice Chairman Devin Graham.
Here.
Mr. Mike Breaux, not here. Mr. Willie Robinson. Mr. Ed Krause.
Here.
Mr. Steve Jofrion. Mr. Brandon Bennett.
Here.
All right. At this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment period. If anybody's got anything for or against the Board of Variances, please come forward. Board of Adjustments. All right, closing public comment period. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes of the June 23rd, 2015 meeting?
Motion.
I'll second it.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Devin, second by Mr. Brandon. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that was to approve the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the written decisions of the June 23rd, 2015 meeting?
Motion.
All right, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Devin, second by Mr. Brandon, to approve the written decisions as written. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Going to public hearing. Zoning Review ID 2525.15 for lot WD-1-A-1 in the property of Charles Gautreaux or assigns of Charles Gautreaux, located on northwest corner of Airline Highway and Duplessis Road. Somebody here to represent this variance, please come forward. Tell us what you're trying to do.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jimmy Percy with the Jones Walker Law Firm. I was here the last time when we were applying for a parking variance and a cross-access variance. You probably remember the discussion. It lasted a bit longer than your normal discussions at these functions. We've come back to you with a dramatically revised parking variance. We are no longer requesting and working through all the issues of the cross-access as the board had instructed previously. However, we are coming to you with a, as I said, dramatically revised parking variance. I'm going to let the expert talk to you about the specifics of that, but before, Mr. Charles Gautreaux, who is the landowner and is the applicant for this variance, would like to say a couple of words to you first.
How y'all doing this evening? I'm Charlie Gautreaux. I'm the owner of the property and been owning the property for 25 years. We're asking for this variance for me. I'm asking for you to grant this variance for me in order for me to sell this property. And we're not asking for something that hasn't been done in the past. It's been done many, many times. And Lowe's is one of the big ones that I can think that's in right next to us, but it's been done. And I would appreciate your help on this. I'm trying to turn the property over. I don't think that we're gonna give a people a choice. If they want to go to Walmart, they go to Walmart. If they want to go to LeBlanc's, they go to LeBlanc's. We're not gonna put a stop sign in LeBlanc's driveway saying you can't go. So I'm just asking for this to be done, and we've made some dramatic changes, and Mr. Frank's going to explain that to you in a second. And I appreciate you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Frank Petrozello, President of Skilkin. Here again. As you've heard, we've made many changes, so I'm going to list them, and then hopefully we can discuss them if there is reason to do that. Number one, most importantly, we have reduced the size of the building. There was some concern last time that we were trying to put too much in too little, and we took a look at our building, and we were able to shave off almost 2,000 square feet. That's a significant reduction in the building size, which obviously puts less burden on the site and the parking and all the other issues with regard to the development of the property. The next thing that we did was that we increased the parking count and also increased the parking ratio. At our previous application and the application that was approved before that, we were asking for a 4:0 parking ratio on a larger building. We are now, as I said, a building that's about 2,000 square foot smaller, and we're asking for a parking ratio of 4.71. That is 0.29 off of the zoning as it is in place. Note that we are complying with all other ordinances, all other issues with regard to this site. This is truly the only issue that stands in the way of approval and are moving forward. I want to point out that we do not use parking spaces that are as small as allowable in Ascension Parish. The code requires 9-foot wide spaces. I don't know how familiar you are with, I don't know that you get out measuring tapes, but I do sometimes, and measure parking lots. When you're driving large vehicles, which interestingly enough we seem to all be doing, or most of us be doing, a 9-foot parking space is a hindrance, especially when you're talking about a grocery store parking lot where there are carts and people and children moving everywhere. As you know, when you back out of a 9-foot space or a narrow space, you have to back out farther before you can cut it. So that obstructs the drive lane even more. I have done many, many stores, grocery stores, for Kroger, for Walmart, the like. Their company minimum, rightfully so, is 9.5 feet. I have never done a store with 9-foot spaces. If you do the math and you compare our ask of 4.71 to 5, it is essentially the same ratio as comparing 9-foot spaces to 9.5-foot spaces. In other words, we have essentially the same amount of pavement, the same amount of coverage as a 5.0 lot with 9-foot spaces. But 9-foot spaces are not acceptable and not usable, we feel, in a grocery store environment. And as you know, we have thousands of grocery stores. So we consider that as our most important issue, that we want to make a safe and comfortable environment for our customers. And we feel that is the way to do that. Across the street, that shopping center is 9.0 spaces on all of them. I know this for a fact because we actually share civil engineers. The other problem with 9-foot spaces, and I've done this myself, is that you don't have a full parking lot, you pull next to somebody, you sort of hedge a little farther away from the person on one side of you because the space on the other side of you isn't occupied. Well, what happens is that you get spaces that over time, as the lot fills, spaces that are too narrow. So they lie in wait for a motorcycle. We are very concerned about that, and that is another reason why we want 9.5-foot spaces that we feel are absolutely necessary for the operation of our store. Those are basically the changes. We find them to be significant, and we ask that if you have any questions.
So if you were doing it 9-foot wide spaces versus the 9.5,
Yep,
you'd be able to fit all of them? You wouldn't need a variance?
that is correct, but we will not do a store with 9-foot spaces.
Okay. Okay. And Lance, they're required to be 9-foot?
We require a space 9 by 20.
Minimum.
So,
Minimum.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? unless you want to open up public hearing.
Yeah, I'm good with questions.
All right, have a seat. We're going to open up public comment
Thank you.
period. Anybody would like to speak for or against this variance, please come forward, sign in.
Matthew Percy. Good evening, Matthew Percy on behalf of Randy and Marcy LeBlanc, who own a neighboring piece of property who opposed this variance. On June 23rd, this board considered a substantially similar variance request to have less parking spaces than required by the development code. That request was denied. The same applicant now comes before you again, seeking to have less parking spaces than required by the development code. As we previously asserted in the June 23rd meeting, the applicant has again failed to show any unique circumstance or any unnecessary hardship as required by the development code that would justify this board granting them a variance. The fact remains that the applicant's proposed construction is just too large for this piece of property. The development code specifically states that authorization of a variance from the terms of the code should only be sparingly used. The code also states that the terms of the code were carefully planned to allow the maximum possible freedom for development. The maximum possible freedom in this case is a parking ratio of 5-to-1, not 4-to-1 and not 4.7-to-1. While the applicant has set forth that a 4.7 parking ratio would be sufficient for their proposed development or for their own needs, the fact remains that a 4.7 parking ratio is not sufficient under the terms of the development code. The code also specifically states that it was the parish council's intent that a variance be used only to overcome some unique circumstance or exceptional physical condition of a parcel of land. In this case, the parcel being too small for the proposed construction is neither a unique circumstance nor is it an exceptional physical condition. Further, the code specifically states that the hardship complained of cannot be self-created. In this instance, the applicant is self-creating their hardship by proposing construction too large for this piece of property. A smaller proposed development would be able to satisfy the requirements of the development code. The development code also states that an unnecessary hardship cannot be established by one who purchases land with or without knowledge of the restrictions. In this case, Walmart hasn't even purchased the land yet, and based on their application, they obviously know of the parking restrictions established under the code. Walmart could find another piece of property somewhere else that can adequately suit the size of their proposed development. And just one more note, they keep giving examples of Lowe's and other developments. The code specifically states that evidence of variances granted under similar circumstances shall not be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy LeBlanc. I just want to talk briefly about the parking spaces as well, because that's what we're here for tonight. And why me? Well, my qualifications are real simple. Not an attorney, not an engineer. I'm a retail grocer, 40-plus years in the retail grocery business. 30-plus years of those, 30 of those years in management, nearly 20 of those years as an owner-operator. The parking variance is in place for a reason you already know. From our perspective and my understanding as a retail grocer, it's not about the averages. It's not about all the empty spots when you pass a supermarket or any retail establishment. It is about the needed spaces at the peak times. That is what is in play here. Will there be enough spaces in the peak times? You heard from their side talk about shopping carts. They're a problem. People leave them in a parking lot. Pedestrians, children, again, take up space in that parking lot. At the peak times, major holidays, natural disasters. We've all been through a number of hurricanes in our lifetimes. Even the 5.0 sometimes is not enough. But to go less than that at some point in time, we're all going to be faced with it doesn't work. Thank you.
Marcy LeBlanc. Been in business all my life here in Ascension Parish. I have one real understanding to say here is that we've been in business in this parish 53 years and have never asked for a variance. And I would just reiterate that there shouldn't be a variance given tonight for the reasons that they have stated. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, closing public comment period. Yeah, come up and rebut that.
Just very briefly.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody got any questions?
Go ahead.
I do have one question, and I believe you may have stated it. You do have, if you utilize the 9-foot by 20-foot, there is enough space to essentially put the correct amount of spaces in there that's allotted, correct?
Right, but
So
we
the
just,
space is there.
the space is there. It's just that we can't operate with 9-foot
understand.
spaces. Yeah.
Okay.
Why is that? Why, when you say you can't operate with,
Because 9-foot spaces are just not wide enough. You know, as I said, I do stores for the 2 largest grocery companies in the country, and they won't do anything less than a 9.5-foot space. It's for reasons, as I've mentioned, in terms of safety and access and the like. The vehicles are getting bigger. 9 foot is too narrow. I don't know how else to say it. Any other questions? May I respond to just a couple
Sure.
of points, please? One, I want you to understand that we're dealing with all drainage issues, all wetland issues, of which there are very little, all floodplain issues. We're not shirking our responsibility with regard to any of that. Now, you heard mentioned by our neighbors that that the parking issue there is for the peak usage of the lots. If you will remember, last month, we were instructed that the 4th of July weekend was one of the biggest weekends of the store across the way. I asked Duplantis Design Group to do a parking survey that weekend, where tore some guys away from their family over the holiday weekend and asked them to count cars and asked them to take photographs. I have with me here Ricky Galloway with Duplantis. He's a civil engineer, and if you would, I'd like to give you a copy of these studies that we did.
Okay.
It's a cover sheet here, parking usage summary. We can pretty much get right to it. If you turn to page 3, it's the site visit summary, and this is Friday, July 3rd. This is the Friday right before the big holiday weekend, and it was during the peak PM shopping period. Starts at 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. on Friday, July 3rd, goes to 4:45, then to 5:15, 5:45, about a half-hour increments, something like that. It lists the number of spaces that were parked, and it lists the ratio against the size of the store. You'll see at the top one here, there were 188 spaces, 188 cars in the parking lot, which constituted a 2.68 ratio per 1,000 square feet. 125 of those were in the LeBlanc slot, the rest were in the small space lot. What's interesting to note here, which is the same in all cases but one, that the parking load per ratio is greater for the small stores than it is for the grocery store. And that is because, as I mentioned last time, the larger stores are more efficient in their use of parking than the small stores are. So you can run right down the list here of the difference in ratio between the LeBlanc's lot, which gets down even to 1.17 down at the bottom. And then we also, on Saturday, did the same thing in the morning. Now, this doesn't have the small shops because the small shops weren't open that day, but you can see the ratios that were there, 2.04 to 2.4. We also looked at our other store in the parish. If you go to the last page, page 9, the bottom paragraph, we looked at the store at Highway 44 and 42 in Prairieville. And during that same period, the maximum ratio that was encountered was 2.8 per 1,000. Now, I want to give you some perspective on that number. This store is not a lagging store. In other words, we know what the sales are in this store. This store is actually doing 20% higher than the projections for this store. So we are by no means dissatisfied with the amount of customers and the amount of parking and the amount of business we are doing here. We are in no way using the full 4:0 ratio for our stores, nor do we believe, at least on the observed dates and times, are our competitors. So I hope that that puts some perspective into this notion of ratio. Go ahead, Mr. Percy.
Just a few final comments. Jimmy Percy again. First of all, with regard to hardship, I want to make sure the board understands clearly what we're suggesting is the hardship, but I'm going to address whether you even need to show a hardship in this case. The hardship is being forced to construct concrete on the property beyond what is necessary for the parking at peak hours. That's the hardship, and that's beyond a financial hardship. The hardship also is constructing a concrete desert in a very sensitive drainage area, as we've already discussed previously. But, and I've had this conversation with the parish attorney, with regard to parking variances, and with all due respect, we've talked to the staff recommends approval of the variance. What the staff understands is, this is a variance, and I don't think I'm overstating the case, please feel free to talk to the staff. This is a variance that is routinely granted when requested. Nobody's asking here tonight for anything that other businesses similarly situated throughout the parish of Ascension have been routinely granted. Nobody's asking for anything, any special treatment here. With regard to the parking variance in particular, what your code allows is, actually, there is an entirely separate provision beyond the Board of Adjustment provision that actually authorizes a waiver or variance of 25% of the parking ratio without any showing. And again, please feel free to consult with your attorney on that issue. We're not even sure, however we believe we have established a hardship, demonstrable hardship, but we're not even sure that one is absolutely necessary, particularly where there is a showing, as here tonight, that it's not necessary. We heard you loud and clear at the last meeting. That's why we're here tonight. We heard you loud and clear about your comments, your questions about the site, about the configuration, about whether there was sufficient area for the parking. We've reduced the building, we've responded, and this is a very, very small variance that is being requested for all of the reasons that we've established. Again, it is safety. You can go out to that parking lot. I looked before I came in. Everybody drives a truck and an SUV now. Very few people are driving sedans. I lived in Ascension Parish for years. I know what people drive down here. 9.5 feet is an internal standard that they will abide by. Finally, and again, staff recommends approval, but finally, there is a unique circumstance here, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but there's pending litigation. And the other reason that we're here tonight is in an attempt to resolve pending litigation. Right now, my client, Mr. Gautreaux, are not parties to that litigation. The parties to the litigation are the LeBlancs and the parish from the original grant of the variance. We're trying to resolve a situation. We're trying to take care of a situation with an extremely dramatically revised request for a variance. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and we respectfully request approval. If there are any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Has public safety even been thought of as far as if we have a reduction of parking spots where if we do have an influx of people, say hurricane or anything like that, where they may choose to park across the street and then walk across the street to Walmart? Has that been thought about?
Yeah, and that was the significance of the parking study, even at the peak hours of a particular very, very heavy weekend. What's going to happen in two cases? What's going to happen is, and we actually talked about this very briefly at the last one. First of all, a 4.7 is probably double what is necessary even at peak times for parking at this facility. So even in a hurricane, you're going to have adequate parking. If they can't find a parking place at this location, where are they going to go? Across the street to the LeBlancs. That inures to the benefit of the LeBlancs. But again, we wouldn't ask for it. We wouldn't ask for one parking spot less than was necessary to serve whatever customers wanted to come to that store and shop. That's cutting our own throats. We would not request that.
All right, any discussion? Motion?
I'm okay with the 4.7 ratio. Based upon the survey and the fact that you do have enough space, it's just an internal deal where you're wanting to provide it for safety at 9.5 feet. I personally don't see a problem with it. Yeah, make a motion.
All right, that's a motion to approve.
Yes.
All right, do I hear, second?
Yes, sir, I agree with that as well. So I'll second that.
All right. Got a motion by Mr. Ed Kraus, second by Mr. Devin Graham. All those in favor? Those opposed? All right. Motion for variance passed.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We go to zoning review ID 2005-26.15. Portion of Lot 1, formerly portion of the Rosalie Santamar property for Randy Gotro, located on the east side of George Lambert Road, approximately 300 feet north of LA Highway 429. If somebody's here to represent this variance, please come forward. Nobody here for that one? Thank you.
Is it no one here?
I guess everybody's leaving, so let me know nobody here for this one.
No?
They're not. You could either rule on it or y'all can move it to next month, either one. You want to rule on it? You want to wait until next month? Yeah, somebody make a motion to move it.
Motion to move the agenda next month.
I'll second that.
All right. Got a motion to move it to our August meeting. Give them one more chance to make the August meeting. And then, by Mr. Devin, second by Mr. Brandon. All those in favor? All right. Any old business? Anybody? It's kind of quiet now.
Everybody wants.
Everybody gone now. Any new business? No new business? New business, we got name tags for everybody.
That's nice.
Yeah,
That's
new
nice.
members got name
Hey,
tags.
how y'all doing?
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
No motion.
Second?
I'll let Eddie second.
Deb. And I got Devin. Motion by Brandon to adjourn, second by Devin. All those in favor? All right, we are adjourned.